That's good. Y'all are a compliant group. This is good. Let me speak to that issue of compliance really quickly. I had some of the people who asked questions or brought up things come and apologize or clarify, or I didn't mean this, or I want to make sure that. Dudes, loosen up. In other words, the way I see it is this. First commandment in the Bible was to subdue the earth, be fruitful and multiply, name the animals. And that's what we're doing. We got this really interesting problem. This super complex set of questions about the most complex creature God made. And how in the world are we going to figure that out? Well, the way you figure it out is you throw out ideas and you go back and forth, and Cox writes something on the board and somebody says, yeah, well, what about this? And we go back and forth, and as the body of Christ, we name the animals. And so one of the reasons I like to encourage this kind of teaching, and the reason I want to engage y'all in this way, is because I want y'all thinking out loud and throwing out ideas. And some of yours will be as dumb as some of mine, but I want to encourage that. And so please, take risks, hold the hands up, say what's on your mind. Let's think together and serve Him better. All right. Which brings us to the third character issue. Since I'm talking about cutting yourself some slack, giving yourself a break, forgiveness. The third ability that we need character-wise to make sense of in the world is making sense of bad and good. Unless some of you here are a lot older than you look, I'm going to make the assumption that none of you were born at Eden. And if you weren't born at Eden, then you were born under something we down south call the curse. And it means everything on your life that's not on TV is messy, it's bad, it's a problem. You're in a hurry and you miss every red light, and the other line always moves faster, and you lose someone you love, or you struggle with sin you can't get rid of. We're now dealing with something that God told us we were not created to deal with. Of all the character abilities we're going to talk about, this is one we shouldn't have to make sense of. If Adam and Eve had not sinned, they would still have me here lecturing on attachment and still have me lecturing on boundaries, though I'd be a much less fallen version of myself. And we would be talking about authority and stewardship, which we'll talk about in a second. But we would not be talking about this one because our forefathers did not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and learn something they didn't need to know about. And that is, we were not supposed to have to make sense of how painful and fallen things were. Our hearts are not created for this. So this is a tough one, and it's the reason everybody you know and everybody you see struggles with shame at some level. We don't have shame because all of us have mamas who, called us names when we were little. We all have shame because we're born under the law. We all have shame because we ate of a tree that was called the knowledge of good and evil. Hello, we're not making this stuff up. So what happens when you eat of a tree that's called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, aside from the fact that you will surely die, is all of a sudden you start gaining an understanding of good and evil. Shame, judgment, embarrassment, humiliation. Was that good? Did you think good of me? Did you think bad of me? Oh my gosh, what did I say that at that party last night? Oh my gosh, are these people liking my talk? Oh no, what's this, what's that? And we start living in this awful kind of fearful, shame-based way. And you see it when Adam and Eve eat of that tree. What do they immediately start doing? Practicing their newfound skill. What do? They hide, exactly, and what else? They cover themselves and they hide and they run. Those are all forms of pulling away and hiding. And what's the thing give me one more, boys, let's go. What else do? They blame, yes. Okay, Adam, get this. Adam blames Eve. He says, the woman who you gave to me. He blames Eve and God in the same sentence. I mean, that's really pretty good for your first day as a sinner. I mean, it's like a double play, and it's a rookie in the big leagues. It's like, whoa. Immediately they start practicing this new skill of judging and shaming and evaluating, and Adam blames God and Eve blames the serpent, and ironically Satan's the only guy who doesn't blame anybody. So basically, this is a theological issue, though everybody you know, Christian, non-Christian, whatever, struggles with shame. The statement, life stinks, is a theological statement. It does, all right? So in order to make sense of life the way it is now, we're fish out of water. We're swimming upstream. We're not created to do this. And so we have to have a really sophisticated ability to manage failure and shame and disappointment and loss in the world, in other people, in ourselves. This occupies an enormous amount of our energy. Don't you wish God had warned us not to eat of that tree? Usually what people do when we encounter something bad in you or in me or in the world is we try to resist it through some form of protest. In other words, what our natural human tendency is when we encounter the fallenness of the world is to protest in some way. Give me some examples. Somebody blames you for something. What do?
We give an excuse.
We give an excuse. Well, that's not true because blah, blah. We're in protest. Or what else do we do if they blame us? We blame them back. No, not me, you. Like this is, your marriage, the badness hot potato. Like who's the bad one, who's the bad one, who's the bad one. If we encounter a great loss in life, you lose your job, what do we do? What are some ways we resist that? We it's a bad job anyway. I'll find another one.
Crazy boss. Crazy boss.
Yes, crazy boss. We blame somebody. In other words, when we encounter pain in life, we usually some sort of denial, some sort of blame. Perfectionism is a huge form of protest. I'm not going to deal with the fact that life has fallen. It better be better. You make it better. Or I'm going to be like, Martha Stewart and make everything perfect, I'm going to become one of these people who has everything just right. I live in this resistance I'm going to live in a position to try to overcome the fall, essentially, okay? And that's what most people do. This one is going to touch a lot of other areas too, because one of the reasons we become chameleons here under Boundaries is because I don't want you to see me, because if you saw real me and didn't love me, I would feel what? Shame, exactly. I want y'all to learn that word shame. Shame is that scorn and that humiliation that comes from having myself really seen and you withdraw and pull away. Okay? Shame is that humiliation and embarrassment that I am core bad. And you're going to deal with it in everybody you see. So, what do we do with that? We've got to have some rich relationships, rich experiences and relationships. And it starts growing up if you can. I tell parents, by the way, that you can't just live neutrally and your child not feel shame. Your child is born shamed. They come out of the womb shamed. And what we have to have is relationships that literally unshame us, that make room for us to be fallen people and that to be safe. We have to have rich experiences in relationship, both growing up, developmental relationships, and now the developmental relationships we have in the body of Christ, like with a pastor, with a therapist, with a counselor, with a support group, that tell me basically that even though I'm fallen, and even though I'm sinful, that I am still loved and it's still safe. Let me say that again. The only way to overcome and manage the pain that comes with the fall, of how screwed up the world is, how screwed up I am, how screwed up you are, is I've got to have some relationships that show me that even though I am in that pain, I am still loved and you're still with me and you walk with me in it. And it's safe. Okay? That it's safe to be fallen. You know how the therapists say, oh man, you're a narcissistic maniac. That's okay. Don't be down on yourself. It's not okay. It can be safe. We can make it safe because of grace and love to be fallen. It's not okay. But one of the things we have to be shown in order to function in life is that somehow when I encounter the bad in me and bring it to you, that it's going to be safe. Does that make sense? We need these relationships that say it's okay to be you, I forgive you, I have room for you, I see you, warts and all, and it's cool, all right? We got to kind of get that, or we're going to spend the rest of our life sort of getting Porsches and hair implants, so you'll think I'm great, okay? Yes, sir?
Sorry, it's just a total interruption, but it just makes me think so much about tolerism right now. Like, everybody's trying to say, it's okay if you're you be you, and I'll be me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't reject me, don't judge me, and tolerism is everywhere.
Yes. So, develop that. Where do you want to go with that?
The thought, I just hit me that tolerism, like we're facing it all the time. You know, I see it with our youth, and I see it with the culture, and
yes.
Christians are being judged because we're judgmental.
Yes.
You know, so.
Okay, so he's bringing up the issue, I don't know if y'all can hear him, the issue of the whole sort of tolerance movement, like, hey, it's just okay to be you, whatever. All right, in my view, the tolerance movement is not an attempt to address shame and make it safe to be real me in attachment. The tolerance movement is a way to basically say, we don't even need to ask this question because there is no standard, okay? Now what I want to say is there is a standard. That's why we talked about boundaries. There's an absolute, and there's right, and there's wrong, and there's good, and there's bad. Now, given the fact that your life right now, something awful in it happens, how are you going to survive that? By being connected to love. Now, there's something in your own heart that is awful and sinful and destructive. How do we survive that? Well, you got to start by somehow being connected to love. I love you and I'm with you. Now, does that mean I'm not going to maybe put you in jail? Well, I'll love you from jail, okay? There's going to be consequences, there's limits, there's structure, there is reality and defined truth. But the only thing that we have to start with the safety from shame that says somehow I can survive this badness if I'm connected with you and with God. Yes, sir.
Is shame not an indicator of something, in a sense, is it a fruit of something else that's really going on? And in that sense, is it really okay to let someone know, hey, you're safe? And, does that make sense?
Keep talking. I like what you're saying. Keep going.
Well, I don't want to disclose too much, but I mean...
You mean if someone is feeling shame, maybe that's a good indicator that there's a problem?
Yes.
Okay, let me put it this way, and I'm using the term shame very technically. I don't mean conviction of sin. I don't mean the sorrow that leads to repentance. I don't mean that burden that we carry when we are living outside of God's way. What I mean by shame technically is that direction we can go in our hearts where I feel so humiliated and so awful that I tend to shut down and pull away and distance myself from God and other people. Now that is a problem in a way that cuts us off. If someone is saying, I feel conviction of sin that's burdening me and I can't sleep at night, and they're coming to me and talking, I want to say, do you feel safe telling me that I will work with you and I still love you and we're going to walk through this together? And they go, yeah, that person isn't dealing with shame. That person's dealing with good, healthy conviction. Good questions. Other thoughts?
The first thing you'd have to do is help them deal with that shame or that fear. And who are they afraid of? Finding out who they are.
Good, exactly. He says the first thing you would have to help them do is to deal with their shame and their fear. Anybody who comes in to see you, your job one, you tell me. Somebody who comes to talk to you, or somebody comes to talk to me, and they have a problem that they need to address. What is the number one concern they have when they sit down to talk to you? What are they afraid is going to happen? They're going to get rejected. You see, that's what I'm talking about. That's our gut reaction is, if you really know me, the result is going to be scorn and this relationship is done deal. It's over. It's not safe. So one of the first things you have to do as someone who's working with other people as a one-on-one is to create enough safety or to address that sense of shame to where they do feel safe talking to you about them. I saw a teenager 2 weeks ago, and he walks in. I usually meet with teenagers and their parents first, you know, for kind of see if I can get the big picture. And then I play a little musical chairs. I send the parents out and just meet with the teen. And the minute the parents left, he sits in my couch and he's looking at me, and he kind of wide-eyed, and he goes, which I really thought was amazingly insightful. He said, I'm afraid to talk to you. And I said, really? What are you afraid of? And he goes, I'm afraid that you're going to judge me if I tell you really who I am. I'm like, wow, you're healthier than me. I can't be that honest with my friends. But his first thought was, I'm afraid you're going to judge me. Don't you get that feeling? So job number one for us is we got to get around the shame that says, if I tell the truth, you're going to scorn me and go away, so we can attach to people. Okay? So what are ways in which you can be safe? What are ways that we are safe people with the people we work with? Spend time with each other? How is that going to make you safe?
More time to invest in whatever, or that you're showing each other that you care, whatever, that you're invested in a relationship beyond the moment.
Yeah, good, cool. How about showing safety to like the people you're ministering to? How can they know you're safe when they walk in your office? Yeah.
Share some of your own life with them.
Possibly, yeah. As long as it's not too interesting.
Like how you disclose or don't disclose information about other people that you work with, keep anonymity, things like that. Show them that you care and respect people.
Good, yeah. Confidentiality. What nobody talks about Fight Club, right?
Being a person of integrity in the room and outside.
Good. One of the things that people look for when they start to tell you, most people start with little secrets and then you earn bigger secrets. They'll start with a little secret and they'll look in your eyes, they'll read your eyes. Like, are you kind of like going, wow. Or are you sort of like getting it? I find one of the most important ways that we as helpers can stay safe to the people we're with is to have a growing awareness of our own fallenness. In other words, to the degree that you have people in an accountability position with you, to the degree that you are learning about your own sinfulness, to the degree that you're learning about your own fallenness, you will be a safer minister. I always tell therapists that I can smell a therapist who's never been in their own therapy from the street because they're full of simple, easy answers. They don't know how hard it is to really change. Okay? So I think the degree to which we're aware of how much I can't just like go, well, all you need to do is start me doing so-and-so and so-and-so and it'll be okay. The degree that I'm humble and know that that's impossible, then I will be a safer and safer person. Yes, sir? Yes, Janet?
I guess the first thing we were here, Stacy Croft was teaching the third years, and he said,
Yeah.
when he does a one-on-one, he says something, there's nothing you can tell me that you've done that I haven't done or wanted to do.
Whoa, cool.
I think I was talking to him, that would make me feel good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Body language, like not looking at the clock.
Not looking at the clock. So yeah, is there anything else? That's good.
Just not being shocked by something that they share.
Good, yes.
Like just that way you said really struck me, that understanding your own fallenness.
Yeah.
I think someone who understands their own fallenness is not the person that like, they don't even really sit there and listen. As soon as the kid says something, or whoever you're meeting with says something, it's like the immediate reaction. But if you really understand your fallenness, or that you thought or wanted to do the thing that they're, like you're there, then I think you're much more inclined to listen to what they have to say and wait before you start talking. And when you do start talking, it's not, here are the 3 ways to fix you, but let's talk about how we can kind of walk through this together.
Genius, exactly. In case y'all didn't hear him, he's talking about what Job said, oh, that your wisdom would be silence. In other words, one of the things I've learned just by being a therapist, and it amuses me actually, it's like if somebody comes in my office and starts telling me about their problem, after about 10 minutes, I know exactly what they need to do. And after about 30 minutes, I realize that that was completely wrong. And so it's almost been amusing to me. It's like I'll notice after about 10 minutes, I'm like, swish, I got this one, no problem. And then I'll go, wait a minute, man. In about 20 minutes, you're going to be going, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't say anything back then. All right? In other words, that wisdom to sit and hear the story and learn who this person is, because they will unfold it. And the humility is sort of keep your mouth shut until you do. A lot of the reason, okay, here's a good one for you. What is one of the reasons that us as ministers and counselors and helpers tend to want to rush to give people help and fix-its and solutions and all that. Because we're what? Afraid we're not going to help them good enough, or afraid they're going to leave and say that guy wasn't any good, or afraid they're going to leave and say that wasn't any. Our own shame makes us have to fix them. Okay, so if you can manage your own shame enough to sort of go, I don't know the answer to this yet, then you can sit with the time it takes to really get to know this person's heart. So that's where your own growth, your own sanctification is so key in being able to really love people. All right, so struggles here tend to go in two directions again, and we're not going to make them like gender-based in any manner. But one of them is we can live under condemnation and judgment all the time. And that's what we've been alluding to so far. Probably because that's kind of more my problem. I'll talk about it more. In other words, one place you can go if you don't understand grace and connection is to feel under shame, under judgment, feel like you have to do better all the time. What's the other direction you might go?
You don't care what people think, you're just going to do what you want to do.
Take it a little further than that. Use shame. If I'm not feeling shamed, I might be a Pharisee. Get it? In other words, I can either live under shame all the time, or I can go around being shamer. Oh my gosh, you hear about so-and-so? They did so-and-so and so-and-so. Or, really, you did that? That's wrong. I wouldn't, these are kind of the Gomer Pyles of our relationship. Remember when Gomer Pyle kept, following Barney around and going, citizens rest, citizens rest. The whole episode, remember? Citizens rest. This is like the Pharisees go around citizens rest all the time, right? In other words, if we have an injury with this, we can either live under condemnation all the time or become condemners. Those are two polarities we tend to go with it. That's why Jesus said, and usually both are inside the same person. That's why Jesus would say, be careful how you judge, because by that same standard you will be judged. He's not talking about some eschatological event. He's saying if you live with that kind of condemnation in your heart, you're going to live with that kind of condemnation in your heart, if you get my drift. It's a mighty thin dime that don't have two sides. All right, obviously, what's the sin here? Only God is just judge, and we replicate the sin of Adam and Eve, second sin of Adam and Eve all the time. We live as judges. We live in a position of, I would never do something like that. All right, the last one I'm going to brush over because we're going to touch on it a ton with adolescents because it's where they are developmentally. And that is the fourth area we need to make sense of in our character is the issue of authority. Notice that these are developmental. Notice that these go along the lifespan in some way. What is it that babies learn about? Attachment, belonging, closeness. They just want to be held all the time. What is it that toddlers learn about? Boundaries, sense of self, identity. School-age kids, what are school-age kids always complaining about? His piece is bigger, we have too much homework, I hate our minivan, the Joneses got a plasma big screen, my teacher's too hard, everything's good, bad, right, and wrong. They're really into good, bad, right, and wrong all the time, all right? Teenagers start hitting the issue of authority. And what that means is, I need the ability, in order to do life well, to be able to function not only as a powerful agent in my own life, somebody who makes his own stewardship choices, I also need the ability to submit to authority at the same time. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. God calls this stuff submission, stewardship. It's like the centurion. The centurion says, Jesus, you don't even need to come to my house. You just say the word and my servant's going to be healed. Why? Because I am a man who is in authority, and I say to this servant, go do this, and he does it. And I say to this slave, go do that, and he does this. And Jesus says, I have not seen such great faith in all of Israel. And it says that Jesus marveled. I don't know why, I just like that. You know, it's like, how would you like it if somebody said, and Jesus taught this guy named John Cox, and when he walked away, he marveled. I mean, are you kidding me? He marveled at this guy. Jesus did. Wow. Okay, but what did he marvel at? What did this guy get? This guy got the authority chain structure of the universe. In other words, he was saying, I'm a guy in authority, and I say these people do this and do that, but I'm a centurion. I'm only over 100 men. I got guys over me, and they tell me what to do. And basically, the bottom line that's implied here is, Jesus, I kind of know where you fit in that authority chain. All you got to do is say the word. And Jesus is like, this guy gets it. That he is in authority, but he's over authority at the same time, under authority at the same time. That's what you're learning here, is that I am in authority. When 3:35 came, I said, let's go guys, we're starting. But at 4:30 today, I will bend the knee. I will have to stop. I'm not in authority anymore. Get it? We have to live that way all the time. Now this kind of jump makes adolescents nuts. Because they're doing the same thing at the same time. They're in charge and they're not in charge at the same time. All right, the sin here is sins of self-sufficiency. I don't need anything. And passivity. These are subtle sins, and they're not ugly ones that we talk about very much, but they're so destructive and insidious. Self-sufficiency is actually a sin we Christians usually like. It's like you're supposed to be self-sufficient, right? I mean, need is a dirty word in Christian circles. You can't say, well, he's really struggling because he needs so-and-so. We're like, well, you can't say that in Christian circles. Like, it's not okay to need. Actually, we are created as incredibly needful creatures, and healthy stewardship of those needs is incredibly important. We often run to the sin of saying, I don't need anything. Kind of like the church at Laodicea. I'm rich and powerful, have need of nothing, And Jesus wants us to go, no, you're poor and blind and pitiful and naked. You need me. All right? Another sin here is passivity. That's another show. But the unwillingness to actually be proactive. This is where, you know that somebody, you or your spouse need to call the contractor and get that leak fixed, but you just don't do it, and you don't do it. And your wife says, will you do that? And you go, yeah, I will, but you don't. And there's that sort of passive way of living. Like I say, it's another show. All right, well, these are our Fab Four, all right? And they're going to be a background for anything else we end up having time to talk about. You can remember them because they spell out Abba, like Abba Father, or like the 70s Swedish supergroup, whichever you prefer. Now, I'm going to jump right straight from that into talking about teens as relates to this. And we're going to run out of this. Run out of time. That's just the breaks. Y'all can have me back next year. Let's see. I don't have all of y'all all day tomorrow, do I? I have all of y'all at 9:30? Yes. And who do I have at 8:30?
3 through 6.
Maybe raise your hand as 8:30 people. Okay. All right. So we only have one more we have an hour and a half left with everybody. All right. Well, I don't know what we're going to do at 8:30 then, small group. We'll learn stuff we don't tell the others. All right, let's talk about teenagers and get as far as we can with it. And I want to really kind of set us up for that 9:30 time to try to talk about some of their gnarly problems. I'm just going to cut and paste here. All right, what I want to do in the 30-minute version of this talk is I want to look at our 4 food groups up here. And I want to go through each one and talk about how you meet and give to an adolescent at that level. Okay? Clear as mud? Let's try it. First off, there's 3 stages of parenting in a sense. First one I call attending. And that's where you just got little babies. That's like 0 to 2. All you do is attend. You feed them and you change their diapers and you keep them from gnawing on the power cables, right? Teach them the same things you teach a dog. Sit, stay, and don't bite people, all right? Next stage is parenting, and this is, parenting. You play with your kids, you help them with their homework, you give them birthday parties, you send them a time out. Don't fight with your sister. That's parenting. Next kind of parenting is de-parenting. And that's what we're doing with teenagers. Currently, right now, I am what I call MLK parenting, because I'm free at last, free at last. All my children are gone. I'm an empty nester. Though I've started calling it Empty Nest Express because they keep coming back. I don't get it. But anyway, I give you that model because everything we're going to be doing with teenagers is about de-parenting. There's a sense in which teenagers need attachment, but they're going to need it in a de-parenting kind of way. They want closeness, but they're going to need it in a de-parenting kind of way. De-parenting is about how to get rid of them. De-parenting is about helping launch them. They have this terrible problem, and that is they don't feel real equipped to do real life yet, but they feel way overqualified to be a child. All right? They're too big to be a kid, but they're too young to be an adult. And that's what adolescence is. In a sense, you tell what adolescence is by what it is not. It is not the wide-eyed innocence of a child who's just dying to jump in your lap, nor is it that independence of adult. It's this weird hybrid. And you have to sit with the tension of that in the middle. Okay? So de-parenting, we're going to be thinking about how to interact with them in a way that works us out of a job. We're looking for ways to help build their independence and their ability to make choices on their own. That's kind of the goal. And it's really important when I work with parents to get that across, because one of the biggest mistakes I see parents make, and one of the biggest mistakes y'all will see parents make, is parents who want to still do parenting with teenagers. In other words, if you still use parenting principles, if you try to deal with a teenager the way you deal with an 8-year-old, it's hasta lasagna, don't get any on ya, all right? It's going to be ugly. So, let's look at attachment. Attachment with babies means holding them close and snuggling them. Attachment with toddlers means learning to help embrace all their new little abilities, as well as sort of lovingly setting limits on their new little abilities, a lot like teens. Loving a school-age kid means kind of empowering them as they go out to their adventures in the world. Loving a teen. I think one of the most loving, attaching, connecting ways that we can relate to a teen is by learning what it means to treat them like a person. Okay? Remember what we said about authority? That with authority, I'm starting to learn to be a person in the world who engages the world as a budding adult. It means that I make room talking to this teenager about for their role as a peer with me. Let me talk just for a minute about authority. I'm going to throw this in real quick right here, and I'm going to use this blackboard, this well-lit blackboard. When it comes to authority in God's universe, there's 3 places that we got to be able to be regarding authority, and we all have to be able to do them, and we all have to be able to do them all the time. It's kind of tricky, but I guess we could fit this under here if you want to understand authority. And I probably should have put it in there. But one place we got to be able to be with authority is I have to be able to be over others in authority sometimes. In y'all's jobs, you do have a position of authority over others. You make decisions, you are proactive, you engage, you direct, like that's what I'm doing right now. I'm in an authority position. We have to be able to make those sort of choices. Now, secondly, we have to be able to be under others in authority. And that means when my time's up today, I bend the knee and I stop. That means you guys submit to the presbyteries or session or whatever. You guys have to be under authority too. Can you do that without resenting it? Are you able to be under authority? And thirdly, we have to be able to do neither. We have to be able to be a peer. In other words, if I'm chatting with y'all out on the, walking out to the cars after this is over, and you say, hey John, how do you like Nashville? I'm probably not going to pull out the dry erase board. I'm going to say, it's great, man. I ate a good restaurant last night. All right? I'm just going to be a guy, just a dude. You know people who can't just be dudes? They always have to be the expert on everything. You out to eat with them and you say, this is a good salad dressing. And they're like, this isn't salad dressing, it's a raspberry vinaigrette. You know, these sort of know-it-all types, you know. We have to be able to be neither over nor under and just be a peer. Now, here's the secret of the universe when it comes to parenting teenagers. We parent little kids from this position over. You say to a 5-year-old, what? You don't eat the cat food? No, you can't eat the cat food. Okay? You parent a teenager from both of these. And it sounds like this. They say, I hate chemistry. Now, the overparent would say, well, then I hope you like garbage, because garbage man is what you're going to be one day if you don't pass chemistry, you know. What the both parent says is this, yuck, I got to tell you, I hated chemistry. Chemistry is the worst. In fact, it's the only notebook I saved after the semester was over in high school because I thought I would need it again next semester, if you know what I mean. I hated chemistry. I can't believe you have to do it. But if you make anything below a C, we're grounding you from your car. But man, I get it. Dude, chemistry. Got it? And this is going to apply to attachment with teens. With attachment with teens, I want you to stretch on the peer thing. We're going to get more to the over thing in a little bit. But you parent a teen from both positions. And when you're in a ministry role with teens, you do both positions. We want to make room for what they say at that peer level. Because they're trying to kind of say, hey, include me. I want to be an adult too. Now, when I actually tell you my ideas, they're going to be, a lot of them are going to be really dumb and maybe dangerous. And you probably can't really embrace them. But I want us to at least make room for them. I remember when we were redoing our house at one point, Callie, my oldest, would just sit there, we'd talk to the contractor, and we'd be saying, okay, we want to do this, we want to paint this, that color, and this, that color, and she'd just sit there and go, and I would say, Callie, do you have an opinion about this? And she'd go, yeah, there's no way I'd do my house like that. You know, now the overparent would say, well, young lady, when you get your own job and you get your own house one day, then you can do your house any. Making room for her is, well, how would you do your house? That's interesting. Like, what do you think we ought to do? I want to make room for her, okay? Now, I'm not going to change it. I'm still the overparent, but I want to make room for her, okay? This is when they're ugly and disrespectful and say, you know, just sassy. I like to, instead of going straight for the you will not talk to me that way, okay? What I used to try with mine is I would say, you know, in fact, I remember one of mine, I saw her, I asked her something one morning, like, what are you going to do today? And she's like, nothing. And I said, you know, I think it'd feel better to me if you just said, you know, I really don't want to talk right now, Dad. And she goes, I don't really want to talk right now, Dad. I'm like, cool. Later on that day, I asked her something like, oh, you headed out to see a friend? No. And I'm like, interesting. About 3 o'clock, she comes to me and she says, Daddy, my necklace broke, would you fix it? And I said, absolutely, honey, absolutely. But could you answer a question for me first? And she said, yeah. And I said, given how you've talked to me all day, why might I want to fix it? Now what I did with her was I treated her like I would treat one of you. I disciplined her, but not in this, you will not talk to me that way, young lady. I sort of kept going, you know, the way you're talking to me doesn't feel real good. But when she came back and wanted me to do something for her, I just wanted to create a godly kind of accountability for her. And you step way out of that, I'm the bigger than you, I'm the boss of you, telling you what to do kind of role with them, and you start to treat them more like a peer. That's the same thing I'd say to one of y'all, okay? Part of the reason that teens don't talk to parents or us is because we don't tend to do that. Teens want somebody who will talk with them, not to them, okay? I remember speaking in a group at a school in Jackson, and this mom, I get this question every time. This mom goes, what do you do if your son, like 16-year-old son, won't talk to you? And I don't know why I said this to her, but I said, well, like, what do you want to talk to him about? And she said, well, I want to find out like if he's doing the things I want him to do and if he's doing stuff I don't want him to do. I want to check up on him. And I'm like, no wonder he doesn't want to talk to you, okay? I'd be dying to talk to you. It's your checklist, like what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. I told her, what if you started talking to him about things that he likes? What if you started engaging him at his level? You know, he's listening to that music you wish you would listen to. Ask him about it. Learn to talk to him about it. Okay? Anyway, to teenagers, this feels like respect. A whole lot of the problems and symptoms that you're going to see from a teenager is because if they feel like you're treating them like a little child and you don't hear them or make room for them, and this doesn't mean that you're going to do what they say. It doesn't mean they can quit chemistry. It doesn't mean I'm going to decorate the house differently, but it means I'm at least going to make room to hear it. That if they're not heard at that level, they will shut down and they will not talk and they will pull away. And let's cross-reference the last hour. Those things will go into the dark, into that closet that plants in the dark. And where do things never, ever, 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 ever get better? Where do they get worse and start producing symptoms? In the dark. Get it? So one of the things we're trying to do here is with a teenager, we're not dealing with a child. We're dealing with someone who needs us to be an authority over them because they have way more power than they should and they're not wise yet. And they have impulse control problems, which we're about to get. But still, they need to be heard. And that's one of the huge ways you show attachment and connection to them, is to be that ear. All right, boundaries. This is a huge one for teens. All they want to do is get a me, say no, identity issues. Just like that toddler, all of a sudden they want to leave the sweet little family and they want to be all independent and on their own, and they want to get a sense of me. Now again, that's not a bad thing in itself. It's like Joshua's ye. Remember? We got to have this person who can choose. Think about it. I mean, if all you had was a child who was compliant and all they ever did was do what you said, I mean, that's going to be great. You're going to be really proud of your little soldier at grandma's house. But think about it. How are the compliant adults doing in life? And adolescence is this time where we're trying to create somebody who is not compliant and live to tell the tale. Because the only way you can be an adult who's successful is be an adult who can be strong enough to say no, and this is me, and I disagree with you, and I'm not willing to pay you that much for that car, but I'll pay you this much, and you're willing to engage the world as a whole person, okay? So with the boundary issue with teens, we somehow got to start looking for opportunities to embrace that. We want them to start having that sense of self that's independent. That's one of the reasons we're not going to shame them for it or scold them for having that sense of self over here, okay? So, a couple of different issues regarding boundaries with them. Number one, their relationships are going to change. You'll hear parents all getting in a wad about this because their teenagers are going to start feeling more connected to their peers than they are to their families. And they're going to care a lot more what their peers think about them than they care about what their parents think about them in a sense, or at least they play that role. Now, why do they do that? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Yes, sir. Their world's getting bigger, and what role are those peers going to play?
They help them define themselves.
Okay, good, good. How?
They play a safety role.
Yes. All right. Anybody got a toddler? Okay. Once your kid became a toddler, you dads, did your role change? All of a sudden, you're like a lot more in the picture. All of a sudden, toddlers like connect up with dad, and like me and dad are going outside, and you take toddler outside to play ball, and what does toddler say? Bye, mom. Bye, mom. Like, look at big me. I'm going to go out in the world. Well, I'm not going out in the world by myself. I'm going out in the world with dad, who's a parent but not mom. Perfect combo. Okay? So teenagers say, I'm ready to go out in the big bad world by myself with all my friends. Okay? And that's get it? So that's why they all like walk around the mall all together in a little group dressed identically, okay? In other words, they're trying to get away from parents who define them, but they're not ready to define themselves yet. They're not strong enough. So peer group plays this sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a buffer zone, yes, right, good. Kind of this intermediary parenting role for me while I'm getting out into the world by myself. All right? That's why they freak out if their friends don't like them. It isn't that they have like insecurity issues or they shouldn't care so much about what their friends think or whatever. To a teen, my friends rejecting me is like what it feel like if you were 3 years old and your parents rejected you. Okay? It freaks them out. Now, this ain't rocket science. What an incredibly great role you guys have. Why? Because you're like the dad of the toddler. You can be that third party role. You're not a parent, but they're not out on their own. They can come and be with you and talk to you, and you're a safe resource and you're wise and you're grounding, but you also hear them and you think they're cool, and you take them to cool coffee shops and you like hang out, and y'all sometimes like watch movies together, and y'all are this kind of parenting safe person, but you're not parent. It's just like those dads with toddlers. You get it? So developmentally, it's a huge role that y'all can play in that process for teens. Yes, sir?
All right, so what about your parent who doesn't want their kid to ever tell you anything that they haven't already told that parent? And you're like, that ain't gonna happen.
Right.
But then they want some biblical backing for why you're saying.
Then they go back what?
They want some biblical reasons for why that would be the case, why that's okay.
Well, you know, one of the reasons that I don't like working with teenagers is that teenagers have parents. In other words, that's the hardest part about dealing with a teenager, in my view. And actually, one of the mistakes I see therapists making all the time who work with teenagers is not seeing the parents, because once you see the parents, it becomes a huge hassle. Okay? In other words, you have a good feel for what it's like to be this kid because you have to deal with these parents too, right? I don't know what RYM's policy is about dealing with parents and what parents require you to do, and whether parents are in a position to have, demand biblical grounds for everything. I don't know what the policy is. What I would do is say, I will really work on that. If I do work on that, would you be willing to dialogue with me? I don't know which one of us is right and which of us is wrong. Don't get in a power struggle with those kind of parents. They love power struggles. They eat them for lunch. That's why this kid's crazy. I would avoid the power struggle. I would avoid the power struggle and go, let me tell you, I'll do some research on it, you do some research on it, but would you be willing to dialogue with me on this? Because my gut is really that it's important for them to have this kind of role, and I've talked to this brilliant psychologist in Nashville, and he said this, and and have a dialogue with them, and I would try to avoid the power struggle. Okay? This is the kind of stuff I want us to do tomorrow, is to try to get nitty gritty on it. But please, gosh, the parents are just the real problem.
Is some of the ambiguity about this cultural? Because the Bible doesn't know the category of adolescence, I don't think, in the way that we experience it.
Some of it's cultural, and not only is it cultural, but it's always changing, in the sense that in our culture, like post-60s culture, pre-50s, it's hard to find a lot of reference to adolescence. Part of it is that our culture is so complex that there's a longer period of transition from childhood to adulthood. In some cultures, ancient cultures, you go out and kill something, they smear the blood on you, and you're an adult. That's kind of it, Our culture, actually, technically speaking, adolescence could be said to be lasting almost to age 30. In lots of people. And what we're saying by that is that season of a purely, truly defined independent adult on their own takes that long to develop.
And that would be the ambiguity of trying to deal with
Yes.
parents and their claim.
Yeah,
And
right.
yet at the same time trying to deal with a kid that you go, do I need to bring this to the parent? I mean, there's certain things that you'd say, definitely. I mean, it comes to that level.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's other things that's like,
Mm-hmm.
can the parent demand that of me?
And John, just to complicate things.
Okay, it was too easy before.
Well,
Yeah.
and we have states that have codified when this adolescent
Yes,
is
right.
now an adult.
Yeah, right.
And so you have, in the midst of youth ministry, we have parents who say, that 18-year-old is now an adult and is completely emancipated as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have other parents who say, that's my kid.
And what position does that put y'all in?
Exactly.
Exactly. Let me say this about it, because we're down to just a couple of minutes left, regarding parents. What I do with parents in general is I do everything I can to try to integrate with them, try to work with them. And like I say, and I have a little bit different role here than y'all do, but as a therapist, if I am willing to get into that system that's made this teenager crazy, teenagers will tend to be the symptom bearers of the family, okay? In other words, angry dad, distant dad, whatever, that kid's going to bear some symptoms from that. And a lot of the fruit you're going to see from a teenager is going to come out of these character issues, but as they are expressed in the family. So as you learn about the family and as you experience these parents, you're going to get really kind of in vivo, live, HD TV experience of why this kid's crazy, okay? Now, a lot of my job is to try to engage the parents in a parent consultation professional way to try to help them learn. And yet, sometimes, I fail at that. But this is what I keep in mind at the bottom line, is you have a role regardless that you can give, something that you can give kids that is potentially irreplaceable. I have a client, he's graduated now. This guy was late middle age and horrendous family. A lot of competition and hurtfulness and cuttingness and meanness and alienation and awful stuff, and just was very broken and depressed inside. And I knew I needed to really teach him some things about attachment, but he didn't have any reference points for it. His family was just a train wreck. But there was this piano teacher. And this piano teacher loved him. And this piano teacher respected him and loved working with him and spent his time with him and engaged him. And when I started talking about we got to find some reference point in your heart somewhere where you can start to understand what connection looks like, he could reach back and go, there was this piano teacher. And I want to tell y'all, no matter how crazy parents are or whatever kind of crazy stuff they throw at you, worst case scenario, for you to be pouring the love of Christ into these kids, and even saying, okay, your parents say it's not okay for us to talk about this, and I don't really know how to deal with that yet. I understand that there can be difficult for you too. We need to submit to them. But heck, man, let's at least go get some coffee. And there's at least this youth minister. I remember this youth minister. And there's somebody not crazy. At least you can give that, okay? That's a good place for me to stop, because that sounds like a stand for the benediction moment, doesn't it? All right, now, what I'm going to do tomorrow is, what I wanted to do is to talk in a lot more depth in the first hour, but there's not going to be enough of y'all here. We'll just figure out something cool to do, more of this. But Lord willing, what we'll do second hour is I will, instead of teaching y'all directly about teenagers from this stuff, we're going to start talking about the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about depression. Let's talk about anxiety. Let's talk about an eating disorder. Let's talk about suicide threats. Let's talk about the nastiest stuff you can throw at me. And in trying to answer that, I'm going to be giving y'all this material kind of on the road, okay, rather than formally in an outline. And, invite me back some year and we can talk about some more of this stuff. But it's 4:30 and I want to bend the knee to the authorities that I must submit to. And I'm going to close this in prayer. Thank y'all a lot. Let's pray. Father, there's a sense in which after we've worked real hard in a topic like this, with issues like this, I'm moved to worship because we have to work so hard for us to understand how our hearts should work, for us to understand how people should heal, for us to understand where truth fits and where love fits and where forgiveness fits and what to do with shame and what to do with pain, what to do with conflict in relationships. We have to meet in a room and draw on a dry erase board and scratch our heads and raise our hands and work. And as we do that today, I'm moved to remember and recognize and worship that you don't have to do any of that. That it is in your very character to understand love and to understand limits and identity and to understand forgiveness and humility and to understand authority and submission. These are your heart. We fumble around the hems of your garment at that. But I ask that you honor and bless those attempts, that you would reach into our lives here, that you would reach in the lives of these guys and gals here in their ministries, in this week they have together, that you would, and your Holy Spirit would infest them with wisdom and kindness and warmth and winsomeness and engagement and power in dealing with your people. That you would fill your people with this group of people with your Spirit to do that. Thank you that you've given us this day, this time together. Thank you that you've been in our midst. And we ask for your blessing in it. We would honor you in how we carry forth with it. In the name of the one who came, the one who died, the one who makes our oneness with you possible, Jesus Christ, we pray these things. Amen. Thank y'all.